This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Monday here, Southern California. If you missed yesterday's emergency BS Report, we brought Jalen Rose into the studio to discuss Chris Webber, the national championship game, why the Fab Five will probably not be reunited in the stands. It was pretty interesting, though. Check it out on Grantland if you missed it. Right now, Grantland's NBA guy, Zach Lowe, what's happening?
What's happening? Bracing for the playoffs. Everything else in life will have to disappear for a few weeks.
Hasn't the rhythm of this season has been amazing? Like, I don't think there's been a dead week yet. Like, even last week you would have thought Miami's 27-gamer finally ended. We're not quite at the playoffs yet. Here will be the first bad week. And then all of a sudden Carmelo goes crazy. And the Knicks have won 12 straight. Carmelo's making a run at the scoring title. The Knicks started out 18-5, went 500 for about half the season. Now they've won 12 straight. What do you make of them?
I feel slightly vindicated here. Sometimes we're going to be right about stuff. Sometimes we're going to be wrong. But I recall having this discussion with you several times over the season and saying I'm weirdly unconcerned about the Knicks being 500 for 30 games, and I think they're the second best team in the Eastern Conference, or at least neck and neck with Indiana. And that's how they've played in the last. I mean, they've played better than that in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I just have always liked the way that this team plays when they sort of just get down to what makes them unique, which is Carmelo at power forward, running the offense either through Carmelo in the post or driving by bigger guys that are trying to guard him, or spread pick and roll with Tyson Chandler and a whole bunch of three-point shooting. I just like that. I think that's a smart way to play, and that they're a smart team. Mike Woodson for me is the coach of the year right now, if only for the way that he has somehow brainwashed J.R. Smith.
Wow. So Spoelstra wins 27 games. That wasn't enough for you?
Look, I mean, I was actually going through Coach of the Year today, and in preparation for my awards column next week, and you could make an argument for. I went through each team, and I picked out 12 coaches whose fan bases could reasonably say he deserves at least a spot on the ballot, at least a spot on the top 3 ballots. So that's 12, and narrowing it down from there, I mean, it's tough. Spoelstra's right there. I mean, Spoelstra is going to be on my ballot somewhere. He has a totally legitimate claim to the number 1 spot. But when you start going through it, it's like there are going to be ballots. How hard is it to leave off Pop, Thibodeau, George Karl? Like, there are going to be entire ballots to leave off those guys.
I'm going to use the same philosophy that I use when I make my Oscar picks. And I don't have a ballot for the Oscars, but I actually have one for the NBA. I look at the degree of difficulty, which is why your Mike Woodson case might actually be pretty good because of the J.R. Smith thing. But I think George Karl might have actually had the most difficult job of any coach this year, just in terms of like all the pieces on that team, how many ways that could have gone wrong, and what he's exacted from that team. He's my number 2, I think. And then I might have Lionel Hollins number 3. Why does Lionel Hollins always get left out of these conversations?
I don't know. I think I had him number 3 on my fake ballot either last year or the year before, so he's not left out in this quarter. But it's just a tough award. There's always going to be 10 or 12 guys with legitimate claims. And Memphis, we're sort of in like year 3 of Memphis being really good, or just good to really good, and they haven't quite made the leap to great, although they're closer, I think, than most people realize. But I don't know. They're a small market team. They're on national TV a lot. They play sort of a grinded-out, boring defense-first style that isn't super appealing. And I don't think the sort of anti-analytics comments or the Rudy Gay trade controversy helped this case, although it should, because they've been better since the trade. And I think quietly they're the team that I'd be scared of in the Western Conference, particularly with the way the Thunder, as you were talking about on TV yesterday, are sort of scuffling around right now.
Yeah, I agree with you because they're smart. They're not going to beat themselves. They're going to put you in the position to lose. It's weird. It was weird to criticize the Thunder for how they looked offensively in the last 5 minutes of a game when they shot 57%. But that game perpetuated a lot of things that perpetuated is not the right word. That game exemplified maybe a lot of the things that I had been concerned about with that team is just they seem to go one-on-one down the stretch. And, Steve Kerr made a great point on my podcast last week when he was talking about Miami 2 years ago in that Dallas series, how easy it was for Dallas to kind of shut Miami down defensively because it was all dribbling and one-on-one stuff. And now Miami moves the ball beautifully, and it flies around the perimeter, and it's so hard to stop them from getting open shots. Oklahoma City relies so heavily on the talents of those two guys from a one-on-one standpoint and the little pick and roll they do from time to time. But I really wonder, they seem vulnerable to me. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. I mean, I think that we're actually sort of overselling their vulnerability. I mean, to me, I look at them and I see a team that is still clearly the favorite in the Western Conference. But, I mean, look, the stuff you're saying about their offense is on point, and especially the comparison to Miami. Miami realized sort of midway through last year, and especially this year, you just can't be predictable in the NBA anymore. The defenses are too good, and I'm actually writing about this for tomorrow, not about Miami, but about the league as a whole. And Oklahoma City is predictable. Now, if you have unbelievable talent like Miami and Oklahoma City, you can get really far being predictable. Oklahoma City is number 2 in offense. They were number 2 last year. They're a fine offensive team. But when the competition is really good and the margin for error shrinks, being predictable could be the difference between winning a 2-point game and losing a 2-point game and just sort of shaky judgments. I mean, that Westbrook 3 yesterday when they were down by 4, I think with like a minute 30 left, and he just pulled up in transition and took a 3. That's a bad shot when you have other good players around, and that was their last best chance to sort of get back in that game, and that's the kind of thing you're talking about, I think.
Yeah, and also you talk about predictability versus unpredictability. The two best things that Harden did for them last year was he was the security blanket for Westbrook, as we've discussed 20 times. But he gave them an unpredictability because he was so streaky that you just never knew when he was going to take over a game for 9 minutes. And whenever he did, it just made them unstoppable. And now I feel like I know what I'm getting from that team every day. And I want to hold this thought because I want to talk about Denver and their possibilities against Oklahoma City. But going back to the coach of the year for 1 second, does Mike Woodson get credit for this J.R. Smith thing? Or does the fact that the Knicks surrounded them with veterans, J.R. Smith got the 1-year, $2.8 million contract. He's got a big payday coming in a summer with no free agents. He stopped going out. It seems like he matured for whatever reason. I feel like maybe J.R. Smith should get credit for J.R. Smith.
Oh, no, he absolutely should. And the interesting thing about the J.R. Smith thing is that a month ago it wasn't a thing anymore. He was shooting like 39%. His numbers had fallen off. And somewhere someone talked to him clearly, or maybe he talked to himself, I don't know, and said, I'm just going to put my head down and get to the rim almost every time I have the ball. And his game has completely changed in the last month. And I think if you talk to people with the Knicks, they'd mention him. Smith, personally deserving credit. They'd mention Woodson, and the other name that keeps coming up is Jason Kidd. That Jason Kidd is sort of the veteran leader on the team who has the clout to pull guys aside and say, you've got Carmelo, you've got to make the extra pass out of the post. JR, you've got to get to the rim. We need free throws. We need a little variety in our offense. I don't know, how you weigh all those variables. But yeah, you can't. I mean, we do this all the time. It's like the deification of college coaches. You can't do that. J.R. Smith has made a decision to play a certain way, and he's stuck to it with no signs of abating, really.
And to your point, in February, he averaged 2.5 free throws a game. In March, 6.0. In April so far, 5.0. So it's basically doubled how he was getting to the rim. And we talked about this yesterday on the NBA show. I do think there's something to it. There's some cause and effect. I don't think it's the whole story. I think Raymond Felton, the fact that he's playing better has really helped them. But on March 9th, the Mari went down. And from that point on, Carmelo and J.R. Smith took off. And They've been averaging, I think, 52 points a game. More importantly, they're getting it's something like 45, 47 shots a game. Yesterday, they had half the shots that the Knicks took. And I wonder if there's something to, you just take Amari out, and even though it doesn't totally make sense, now his shots go to Carmelo and J.R. Smith for the most part. Kenyon Martin comes in, just gives them defense, doesn't care if he shoots. And maybe that's a huge part of this.
Amari was playing really well offensively.
I know.
So, but I look, I've been beating this drum since the beginning of the season. I think they're better without him. For the obvious reason is they were horrible defensively when he was on the floor, and Melo is still just an average defensive player at best, usually below average, and it just becomes too many of those kind of players on the floor at once for Tyson Chandler to carry the load. So defensively, Amari is maybe one of the 5 worst regular rotation players in the league.
Yeah.
And offensively,
wait, hold that thought for a second. So him, Luis Scola,
oh boy, there are
David Lee.
There are a lot of bad defensive players.
I mean, I'm talking name guys. Those are that's the big 3 though, right? Luis Scola, David Lee, and Amari.
I hate to pick on Jamal Crawford, but he's pretty bad.
Oh, I was thinking big guys. You're right. Jamal Crawford's like a DH.
Yeah, there are a lot of young point guards, and it's hard to know, how much of them are going to grow out of it. But Kyrie hasn't been that much better defensively than he was
Damian
last
Lillard
year.
either. Yeah.
Lillard has been awful, and looks lost and confused. There are a lot of bad defensive players.
And by the way, Jason Terry just called. He can't believe we haven't mentioned him yet in this conversation.
Well, you just rectified that, so there you go.
He might actually be the worst defensive player since the mid-'90s of the Brett Szabo, Todd Day era that the Celtics have had. But anyway, keep going on the Knicks thing because I agree with you. Amari was playing very well offensively, but Carmelo and J.R. Smith were able to replace that offense, and defensively they're now better.
He's just horrible defensively, and just in a very damaging way, because a big man that is horrible is just, he's a very damaging defensive player. And I just, like I've told you, I just felt like the Knicks, even when they were scoring with him and playing okay with him, were just they were contorting themselves, trying to find an identity, trying to find a rotation. Who does he play with? When does he play? Does he play with Chandler or does he not play with Chandler? And they just, when that's gone, and they play Melo at power forward, and they shoot a lot of threes, and they run a lot of Felton Chandler pick and roll, or yesterday they even ran Felton Melo pick and roll on the left side of the floor a lot. That's their team. That team has been really, really good, and that team, I don't think they can beat the Heat, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility there's a game 6 in that series.
They were 16-13 with Amari. They were 34-13 this season so far without Amari. And you hate to just say that's the reason, but at the same time, that has to mean something.
It means, the simple thing about the Knicks is, and I haven't written about them directly in a couple of weeks, if they play this way, we now have 50 games of this sample size, whatever it is, without Amari. When they play this way, they are really good. I mean, that's what we've learned this year. When they play Melo at the 4 and spread the floor and do all those things I said, they're a really, really good team. Period. End of story.
Well, and the other part is one of the reasons that they went in that funk was the role guys were not playing well. And Felton got hurt. He came back. He was terrible for about 6 weeks. Jason Kidd went into a massive shooting slump, and so on down the line. Now you saw yesterday, Jason Kidd was hitting threes. The supporting guys are playing better. And, for me, I still don't think anybody's touching Miami. I really don't. But at least New York has made it a little more interesting. I don't know if we're going to have a faux in honor of Moses Malone for the Eastern Finals. I think the way Carmelo and JR are playing together, and I have to say it, we haven't mentioned this word yet with the Knicks, swagger. This team has a ton of swagger. They really do believe they can beat anybody. Like in Oklahoma City yesterday, which was a game normally you would chalk up to Oklahoma City and just, they're going to take care of business. The Knicks went in there and really thought they were going to win. And they're going to play Miami. They're not going to be afraid. Tyson Chandler's not going to be afraid. Kmart, for whatever reason, I thought watching him last year in the Clippers, I was not a fan. And he was also a cancer behind the scenes. Maybe he had a wake-up call from that whole thing. But you just go on down the line. This is a team that's not going to be afraid of Miami. How many games can they win?
Like I said, I think a 4-2 series is totally possible. And I agree with you. Miami would be a heavy favorite, and even that would maybe be a mild surprise to me, a 6-game series. But, if Carmelo plays like this, and remember in the playoffs last year, they really had to put LeBron on him to shut him down. He had his way with Battier. If you did the shooting splits, he shot like 50-something% with Battier on him and 30-something% with LeBron on him. And so he'll at least put the Heat in an uncomfortable position where they have to decide how much energy do we want LeBron to have to expend, what happens if he goes crazy with Battier on him, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, they're an interesting team. And to your point, Felton is an underrated X factor for them. He is when he's on and his shot selection is good and he's healthy, you saw yesterday, he's a really clever player who understands where the other guys are on the floor, how the other team is defending the pick and roll, where the holes are going to be. When he optimizes his game the right way, he's a very clever player. And look, I've been bullish on the Knicks all year. They're not going to beat Miami, but I like them as the number 2 team.
I do think there's some litmus test guys, and I wrote about this with Miami when Battier and Ray Allen are hitting threes, they're basically unstoppable because the other things are almost fixed quantities in that team. And I don't always like the stats and wins versus stats and losses stats for individual guys, but I thought this was interesting. It kind of passed the eye test of what I see when I watch this team. Felton's played 64 games. They're 44-20 when he plays. When they win in those 44 games, he shoots 45%, 39% from 3, 14 points a game. In the 20 losses, 38%, 26% from 3. Now, obviously that could be some coincidental, but it does. When he doesn't play well, it's really hard for them to win, especially against a good team. And yesterday he played well, and it just pushes them to another level. And I don't think he was healthy for half the season either. So who knows? I mean, I would love for there to be at least a little drama, and maybe they steal one in Miami the first 2 games. It goes back to MSG. The crowd's crazy. Like, give me some fun something in the Eastern Finals. That's my only goal for this.
I think we're going to get that. At some point, we're going to get that, whether it's the Knicks, whether it's Chicago in the second round, not necessarily winning a game, but just sort of making Miami earn it and being physical with them. And there'll be some dust ups, and same if they play the Pacers. Miami should cruise through the East, but it's not going to be like we're sitting guys in the fourth quarter. These are laughers. We're not banged up at all. They're going to get pushed and shoved a little bit.
All right. I have a giant butt coming. You ready? You might have to sit down for this, Zach Lowe.
I'm walking around my apartment, so I am going to maybe I should sit anyway.
Sit down or hold something. Put your hand on something so you don't fall over. I think the Celtics can beat the Knicks in round 1. After everything we just said about the Knicks, and I agree they're the best matchup against Miami, I think the Celtics want to play the Knicks. I think they're super confident about that. The only X factor was the Garnett injury. He looked okay yesterday. I think he's going to be fine for the playoffs. I think they can beat the Knicks. I really do.
Wait. I thought Celtics fans have been telling me they don't want the Knicks, they want the Heat. What happened to that? I thought the Celtics were trying to get Miami.
I do not want the Heat. I don't want the Heat under any circumstances. But, Paul Pierce has a great history against the Knicks. Any Knicks fan will tell you that. The Garnett-Chandler thing, that's a wash. The J.R. Smith thing, the Celtics have multiple guys to throw at him. It's a good matchup. And the last 2 times the Knicks killed them. The second time was a really weird game, and Doc was using weird lineups, and I was almost watching it thinking, I feel like they kind of don't care if they win this game because they want to get the 7th seed so they can play the Knicks. I know that's like weird conspiracy thing, but it was just a really weird game, and the way they rested KG, almost like they don't want to get to 6. I think they want to play the Knicks. Do you agree?
I don't know. I don't think they mind playing the Knicks, I think would be the way that I would put it. And look, you're right. I mean, the Knicks, all of these teams other than Miami are beatable. And the Celtics, when they have all their pieces healthy or healthy-ish and, playing the rotation that Doc is comfortable with, are a very good team. I mean, the numbers have borne that out even this year during a down year. And Green's emergence as a semi-steady player and a decent one-on-one defender gives them
I'm knocking on wood. God.
Yeah, you should, because every time he looks like he's going to really – I mean, look, he's playing well. He's playing pretty well. Still sort of a confused defensive player, but if you put him one-on-one on Melo, he knows what to do. So he gives him another body to throw at Melo, and certainly they're comfortable playing small. so Melo at the 4 is not really going to throw them off, although it forces them to probably play Terry or Courtney Lee or some combination of those guys more than they'd like. But yeah, no, Boston's a good team. I mean, they'd be underdogs, but it's not like they're massive underdogs.
You think who's a better matchup for them, Indiana or New York?
I probably New York, and I think both of them are bad matchups. But New York is just, there's a little more variance to their game in terms of you can get a game when they don't shoot threes well. Whereas Indiana is just, they just remind me sort of a better, bigger, nastier version of the Celtics at this point.
Yeah, even and they have the Paul George Paul Pierce matchup at this point of Paul Pierce's career is not a great one. He has to work super duper hard. That would be a series where Paul Pierce had a lot of like 6 for 18s, and you know, I still believe in the Celtics team, as weird as this sounds. I will say that Jordan Crawford is really rapidly moving up my least favorite players of all time in the Celtics history ladder. It's just impossible to watch him play. If you like basketball, I
had the under on this, and I think you went to the over, but I'm glad you're there.
Really tough to watch. I just think he would be a nightmare to play with. I always judge guys by what would it be like to play with them. He would be the single worst guy to play with, like if you were playing pickup basketball. You'd almost like throw the game so you didn't have to be on his team anymore. I want to talk about the West. Jaylen.
The good conference.
The good conference. And all kinds of fun matchups and all kinds of subplots and weird things going on. And anybody who says they know who's coming out of this conference is lying, because there's just no way to know. There really isn't. But when Denver lost Gallinari a couple days ago, and I had the same reaction as everyone else, just immediately you're bummed because he's fun to watch and that team's fun to watch, and you hate to see anybody get injured, all that stuff. And my second reaction was, well, they're screwed, cross them off. I thought they had a great chance of beating Oklahoma City. And then Jaylen that night on TV on Friday was saying how, you know, he didn't think this was going to be necessarily a bad loss for them because Brewer gets more minutes. The French kid gets more minutes. Iguodala maybe plays a couple more minutes. Fareed plays a couple more minutes. Like, bullpen by committee, they can replace his minutes, and it's not like he was playing outstanding. So my question to you is, did the Gallinari injury change what you felt was the playoff ceiling of this team?
It did. It did, especially combined with the Lawson injury. And the way I'll put it is this: if they are missing both of those guys, I think they're very vulnerable to a first-round upset. If Lawson is back, they'll be first-round favorites, but I think the Gallo injury lowers their ceiling to probable second-round outs, no matter who they face. And you're right, and Jaylen is right, that they have Brewer and Iguodala and Wilson Chandler, and now they're playing Fournier, and even Anthony Randolph is getting minutes. They have guys who can sort of sop up those minutes, and even Chandler and Iggy sort of might be able to combine to approximate the creativity that Gallo brought in terms of the pick and roll and their ability to run the offense through him. But again, I just feel like even if the hit is slight, it's a hit, and the slight hit can really mean a lot if you're facing a great, great team in the second round of the playoffs. And I just don't know that they have enough. And he's an underrated defender, too. I mean, at the 4, at the 3, in the post, on the perimeter, it's just another piece. And it's easy to say that, you know, Wilson Chandler can do all of that, and he can do some of it. He's not an off-the-dribble player like Gallo is. But when Denver really hit a new level, when they played both of those guys together in lineups that were sort of small and big at the same time, and that's a big piece of versatility that's been sucked off the team. So I don't know. They can definitely win a round, and they can push someone in the second round because they're so damn good at home. But I do think it lowers their ceiling for sure.
My initial reaction was they were done. First of all, I agree with you. If Lawson's not 100% or 90%, then this isn't a conversation because he's the key guy in that team, in my opinion. But I kind of like Fournier. He's only played 3 April games, but 21 minutes, 52% shooting, 40% from 3. Like, he makes threes. And the thing with Gallo is you think of him as this long-range bomber. He's an all right three-point shooter. He's like, 36, 37%. Offensively, not as good as you kind of think he is in your head. And I do feel like they could replace his offense. The Lawson thing is irreplaceable, and that's the subplot to watch. But we've talked about this before, I think, in the podcast. Denver versus Oklahoma City was a really nice matchup for Denver, and they have a coaching advantage there, which we don't have to get into. But the pace that they play, you would think that would be a great pace for Oklahoma City, but it's actually about 7 miles an hour faster than they probably are better off going. The center matchup, it's not like they have any big guys that can kill Denver down low. And, I just think second round, it's going to be Denver, Oklahoma City probably, and everybody will assume that Oklahoma City is going to beat them. And if Lawson's healthy, I still think Oklahoma City's vulnerable. I'm not counting out Denver in that series, but it sounds like you are.
I mean, look, I would never count out a good team against another good team. I just mean to say that if you thought that series was a toss-up, I don't think it even was a toss-up to begin with, then it becomes a 70-30, 60-40, something like that proposition for the Thunder. And it goes back to that, you've got to be able to withstand, is Wilson Chandler going to shoot threes like this in the playoffs? I don't know. He's never shot threes like this before. Is he going to cough up some turnovers because you're asking him to do a little too much off the dribble? Or is Andre Iguodala going to have that problem? I mean, and what happens to their crunch time offense, which has been very, very good this year and was sort of allegedly going to be their undoing because they don't have a superstar? 50% of their crunch time plays, and I've watched almost all of them, are Lawson Gallinari pick and rolls, and that's half gone. And Chandler can step into that screening role that Gallo plays, but it introduces an unknown and an uncertainty that makes me uncomfortable.
I agree. I'm bummed because I was really, really excited for Denver to potentially shock Oklahoma City in round 2 and or at least like get it to the point where they're up 2-1 going in a game 4 at home, something like that. You also have it looks like we're going to have Clippers Memphis in round 1. And I saw these two teams in person about 3 weeks ago, and Memphis just toyed with them the whole game, and they're so much smarter and they're bigger, and it was just a great matchup for them for a variety of reasons. I really think Memphis can beat the Clippers in round 1, and if they do, that leads us to Memphis-San Antonio round 2. You remember what happened in this series 2 years ago. We had an upset. Could we see that again?
Absolutely. I mean, I said it early on in the podcast. I think that Memphis is the team that if they're healthy, they could be the 5th seed or whatever and come out of the Western Conference. It's not likely and the odds are against it, but no outcome Memphis over X would surprise me at all. I think they'd be favored over the Clippers right now. The Clippers are sort of the biggest wild card in the conference to me, but favor Memphis. Memphis, San Antonio, the Grizzlies have absolutely no fear of the Spurs. And, look, 2 of the Spurs' 3 best players are injured right now. What are they going to be like in the second round of the playoffs? And then Thunder, Grizzlies, again, that's been a tough matchup for Oklahoma City every time they play with equal rest, no matter where the game is. Those games are tough for the Thunder, and they always have been.
Manu, everyone talks about the big 3 with San Antonio, and Manu at this point, I think, is just at a different phase of his career. Can we honestly say we know what we're getting from that guy anymore? He's barely been able to make through the last few playoffs. And he's a guy that's playing about 23 minutes a game. At this point, I don't know if you can really count him as like a big 3 anymore, can you?
Against some teams you can, against some teams you can't. And it all depends on his health. And without him, the Spurs are vulnerable against almost any Western Conference playoff team, not Utah, which is why they're rooting for Utah, I'm sure, to get the number 8 seed. But no, we don't know what we're going to get from him. And I was saying before how I've been weirdly sort of calm about the Knicks all year. I'm weirdly calm about the Thunder right now. I'm not that they're scuffling, they're struggling against some of the better teams of the Western Conference. I still consider them maybe not heavy favorites, but I mean, I'm not going to hesitate for a second in picking them to come out of the West. And that's partly because I feel like they've solved San Antonio. And I know the Spurs fans will say, well, the season series is 2-2 and they blew them out in San Antonio like 3 weeks ago. I just feel like, and Ginobili is sort of the epitome of that. By the time that conference finals was over last year, the Thunder had realized we're so big and so athletic and so fast that we can make these guys work. And they just can't grind out baskets easily against, or they have to grind out baskets. There are not going to be any easy baskets. And Ginobili had a hard time. It was hard for him, and it's hard for Parker And it's even hard for Duncan sometimes. And I just feel like that matchup, if I'm a Thunder fan, I'm not worried about that matchup. And if I'm not worried about that matchup, I feel pretty good about the Thunder coming out of the West.
I've been accused of being a Laker hater and not being objective about them.
Unfair.
Thank you. Can you gently break the news to the Laker fans that all the sweating they're doing to try to get the 8 seed is only going to lead to a round 1 slaughter against the Spurs? Can you just gently break it to them?
Well, first of all, why are the Laker players appearing in these playoff promos on ABC? That's a very important question. Why am I seeing like Dwight and Kobe horsing around and doing fun dances with the ball? They're not in the playoffs right now.
No. And you know what else? Probably not going to be in the playoffs. They need a lot of help. David Stern is going to really have to step up some of his magic, like some of the magic we saw a few weeks ago in that Portland game. Because right now they're tied in the loss column, but Utah has the tiebreaker. So they have to beat Utah by a full game. And, Nash is out. They have there's so many holes. I mean, good Lord, was it easy for Chris Paul to do stuff yesterday. I mean, it's always usually generally easy for him to do stuff, but if they think that they're going to make round 1 and Tony Parker is not just going to carve them up left and right if he's even remotely healthy, I mean, come on.
Well, this is the only thing that matters about the Lakers, and this is what drives me crazy about the Lakers. Oh, Kobe's facilitator. Oh, now Kobe's scorer. How's the chemistry? Are Pow's feelings hurt? Do Dwight and Kobe get in fist fights in the locker room? Blah, blah, blah. The only thing that matters is they can't play defense. That's it. That's the only – I don't care about any of this other crap. Until they can play defense consistently against good teams, I don't care. And it's going to be interesting if they make the 8th seed and Parker and Ginobili are both hurt. That's a series because the Spurs aren't the Spurs anymore. If the Spurs are healthy, there is zero evidence on the record, none, that the Lakers can defend sophisticated NBA offense with good shooting and good ball movement for 48 minutes, let alone 48 minutes times 4 or 7 games or whatever. It doesn't exist. There's no evidence.
And I'd like to thank you. People think it's funny because now you've gotten sucked into my alleged Laker hatred. I was getting emails from people congratulating me for having my minion at Grantland, Zach Lowe, write about Kobe's defense. Like I had to even ask you to do that. Look, Kobe stopped playing defense. He doesn't play defense anymore. You broke it down in a very long piece that you wrote for Grantland, but this is why I said at the beginning of the season, he's basically a DH. In baseball, he would be a DH, a guy who's offense only. And if you're talking about whether he belongs on first team All NBA or not, and I think actually if they make the playoffs, you can make a real case that he does. You have to mention that he's been a below average defensive player this year. Remove my Laker hating hat and talk about this objectively, please.
I would encourage any Grantland conspiracy theorists to go to a Lakers blog called silverscreenandroll.com that has spent more words this season than anyone breaking down how terrible Kobe has been as a defender. And that's a Lakers blog written by Lakers fans who want the Lakers to win.
Right.
He is just been bad defensively. There's just no way. I mean, he's still a smart, good defensive player when he wants to be, and maybe that will be in the playoffs. But in the regular season, he's been terrible. He's been irresponsible. He doesn't pay attention. He does whatever he feels like outside of the Lakers scheme. His transition defense, like every single member of the Lakers, has just been embarrassing. I mean, there's no other word for it. Their transition defense is embarrassing. And people want to blame it on the fact that they're a big team or an old team or a slow team. All of that matters, but the effort and the technique and the decisions are embarrassing. And Kobe has been a big part of that, and this is my vow. If Kobe makes an all-defensive team this year, I'm at least not citing all-defense for 2 years, at least, in evaluating a player, because it's time. It's like the Gold Glove in baseball. I'm done. I'm finished. These people don't know what they're voting on. It's over.
Well, when Tony Allen, 2 years ago when Kobe made it over Tony Allen, I was done with all defense when that happened. 2 things in Kobe's defense. One, he has a coach who I don't even think practices defense. So it's tough to get better on defense. Jalen claimed when he played for the Suns that D'Antoni they didn't even discuss defense. It was just all offense and just, hey guys, guard the other guy who's guarding you. Like that was the defensive strategy. And then 2, Kobe's playing an insane amount of minutes. And if you're going to defend him, and I think this is a valid defense, they need him so much offensively that I think he just saves his energy on defense.
That's a perfectly valid defense. I mean, look at what's
Yeah.
happened to James Harden's defense this year. He's
Yeah.
horrible because he has to do everything on offense. But there's a difference to me between saving your energy and actively doing bad things. And Kobe has crossed that line. Like, saving your energy is like, I'm going to stay within my scheme. I'm not going to be super aggressive with help defense or whatever. What Kobe's done is like, I'm just going to go wherever I want and ignore whoever I want and do whatever I want and do crazy stuff in transition, like gamble for steals or just watch my shot miss. That's just like actively bad. And that's the line he's crossed this year.
He's playing, and this is funny. He's playing 38.4 minutes a game this year. He's played every game. It's insane. It's year 17 for him. We had Alvin from our NBA Countdown show was looking up who else might have played that many minutes in year 17, and the only guy we could find was Karl Malone. Who might have been an alien. But just to be in year 17, he's played 1,236 NBA games and 220 playoff games. Like, he's nearing the 1,500 game mark as an NBA player, and he's playing 38 minutes a game. That's his best defense. But the reality is, I mean, have you decided on your ballot yet? Because I'm so torn on that last guard spot between Westbrook and Kobe, and I just don't know what to do on that, because I do feel like it's amazing that that the Lakers are 500 with the season they've had, the coaches they've had, the terrible, terrible, terrible supporting cast they have. He's got to get credit for that, but Westbrook's a safer pick. Who are you taking?
I haven't looked at All NBA yet. I do the other awards before All NBA. For some reason, I don't like All NBA that much. I know you love it. I don't. Like
I do.
I
love
much.
it.
But that's an interesting argument. I can't pick one or the other yet before diving into it. But I do think you make an important point, which is, and we have to say this loud and clear because of what everyone thinks our agenda might be. Kobe is having an unbelievable season, like an absolutely fantastic offensive season. He's a genius on offense with his footwork and his efficiency this season and how he picks apart a defense when he has to be. But he's a great offense player. He's in the conversation for, if you think the top three of the MVP is LeBron, Durant, CP3, which I do, Kobe's in the next group of guys. Like, he could be fourth or fifth in MVP voting at his age, doing what he's doing. That's unbelievable. He's having a fantastic season. He's just been bad defensively. Just like James Harden, having a fantastic season, bad defensively. Both of those things can be true.
Yep, I agree with everything. And the only other thing I'd add is Kobe's made about 15 of the most insane last-minute threes that I've ever seen in my life. And somebody needs to just put all of them on a YouTube clip, and I will tweet it, because they're not just threes, but off-balance threes with two guys on them, threes where everybody in the building knew he had to shoot it and he was anyway, threes that didn't totally matter because they were down 6 with 10 seconds left, but he's jacking 30-footers falling out of bounds. Really, the only guy I've ever seen who's made threes like that was Larry Bird. I mean, I know Ray Allen and Reggie Miller, people like that, are better three-point shooters, but I'm just talking about degree of difficulty threes. That's the one thing that stands out to me about this season, other than all the weird stuff that's happened with him. But I mean, have you ever seen anybody make threes like that?
Yeah, again, Larry is the one that comes to mind. Reggie sometimes, but he doesn't do as much on the ball to create them. And you're just think about that stretch where they were beating like the Hornets and the Raptors in overtime or in crazy games, and he was just like, especially in that Toronto game, he made like 4 completely insane shots. Now, we tend to forget the like 9 completely insane shots he missed during those games and during crunch time of those games, but that's the nature of the beast. Yeah,
I mean, I just don't think the average person realizes how hard it is to make a 26-foot off-balance shot with two 6'7" people standing in front of you trying to block it. Like, it's not easy. Anyway, last question. What are you looking for during this last week? What subplot is the most fascinating for you?
I think, this sounds reactionary because everyone wants to be obsessed with the Lakers, and it sounds like I'm trying actively not to be, but I still think the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the Western Conference is super interesting, just in terms of how the 3, 4, 5 shakes out for seeding at home court, and how Golden State and Houston shakes out at 6 and 7, and how those matchups end up is going to be enormously important in terms of our chances of an upset and or just sort of the chalk moving on. So that one is interesting, and other than that, it's just I selfishly want Miami to finish number one in points per possession because I predicted that at the beginning of the season, and Oklahoma City is creeping up on them. And what else? I guess, Atlanta, Boston at 6-7 has become a little thing to watch. And if you polled all the Eastern Conference teams, secretly, I think that the favorites, or even any team, I think Atlanta is the team other than Milwaukee that everyone would like to play in the first round. So certainly New York and Indiana are going to be watching how that 6-7 thing, shakes out. I think Boston has the tiebreaker. I know Boston has the tiebreaker. So, it's going to be interesting. That's another one certainly to watch. I don't know. I'm looking forward to saying goodbye to lottery teams. I watched Cleveland, Orlando this morning and said like a verbal goodbye to them. Bye-bye. I'm not watching you guys either.
I saw you tweeted that. It was like, farewell, Cleveland. It was fun knowing you. Bye-bye, Luke Walton and Sean Livingston. Here's what I'm looking forward to. I want a Boston Knicks round one series, and I want an Oklahoma City Houston round one series. Those are the two things I want. James Harden against Oklahoma City would be freaking awesome. I would just love that. And it'll be over in 5 games, but there'll be the one game. It'll be like 130 to 128, and Harden will have 55 points, and it's just going to be great. And it'll be the best game of round one, and we need that to happen. And I think Denver Golden State would be really fun, too, if that's the 3-6. I would enjoy that.
Yeah, Denver Houston is almost too crazy to be fun. I mean, that's the series where every game is going to be 130, 125, and with like 110 possessions. That's almost too crazy.
Yeah, we can't lose with Houston in round one. Whatever happens with them, it's going to be awesome. And on the flip side, Indiana, Atlanta.
Oh God!
First of all, every game will be shown on NBA TV. I don't even think that gets on. That doesn't get on TNT or ESPN.
The Pacers Memorial spot is like first round NBA TV. Pacers Magic last year.
Yeah, that it just will dominate. There'll be no other reason to think. And then Miami, Milwaukee. I know it looks like a rout on paper, but I do think Monte Ellis could have the one random 49-point game against Miami, right?
I'm just going to leave that one alone. I want that to float. I just want it to float on the record for people to remember when it's a 4-0 sweep and Monte Ellis has shot like 36% for the series. He
definitely
well.
will.
He's been playing well. Milwaukee's played Miami tough, and there's some studies that say that matters. Their defense has been so bad. I just don't see it.
Both of us like the JJ Redick trade for them, and Tobias Harris has turned into a gem. That Orlando guy, Rob Hennigan, did a nice job rebuilding that team. But that's a story for another time. Zach Lowe, Tuesday, your big NBA column, and then Wednesday the Nuggets and playoffs coming up. And this is your wheelhouse. Thanks as always.
Thank you, sir.
Talk to you soon. All right, we have Alan Sepinwall coming up for a little bit of TV talk, but first I wanted to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, Stamps.com. They handle all your shipping handling needs. All you have to do is go to their website, and you never have to go to their post office again. Right now we have a little free trial. If you go to their homepage, go to the microphone at the top, type in BS, and you get a special free trial. You get a digital scale. You get $55 of free postage. Special offer for BS Report listeners, but not just that. You should just go there anyway for all your shipping and handling needs. Stamps.com. Check it out. All right, as promised from HitFix.com, one of our favorite TV critics, our favorite TV critic that doesn't actually work for Grantland, Alan Sepinwall. What's happening?
I think it's a good day. Game of Thrones, Mad Men, Knicks won in Oklahoma City. I'm a happy guy.
Game of Thrones, which I am now watching as they come every week. And it was a lot easier to binge watch them because you could keep track of the characters. I got to be honest. I don't know who 2/3 of the people on the show are anymore. I just kind of am like, hey, it's the little girl who dresses like the guy. And, oh, hey, it's the really tall lady who's carrying that other guy across the forest. And is there some sort of website that can easily help me follow everybody?
There are some, but the problem is you run into a danger depending on what you look up because you might wind up accidentally looking at a list of stuff from the book and then you get spoiled. So I would go to Wikipedia, look up the show, and then look up a character list. That's probably the best you're going to do. Or else go to HBO.com.
Well, I could just tell you this. I hate Joffrey so much. And now you have the little temptress who was married to the obviously gay guy who now is making a move on Joffrey. And it was the single most compelling plot of episode 2. Oh, spoiler alert. Sorry. I didn't really spoil anything, though. But Joffrey, where does he rank on the top 10 villains of all time in TV list?
He's making a power move right now because that's a guy who sometimes you have a show where they want you to hate him and you're not awful enough, and sometimes a show wants you to like somebody and you wind up hating him. This is a show that wants you to hate this guy and you do, and it's really good performance by a pretty young actor playing someone who's just a complete monster. He's fantastic.
And I actually hate the actor too now. Like anything else he's in, I'm going to hate him. And if I met him personally, I'd probably have trouble being nice to him.
I was doing a phone call with the producers the other day, and they were saying like their biggest fear is he's going to wander into a bar someday, and someone's going to take a swing at him because they can't connect. They can't separate him from the actor who they say is like the sweetest guy in the world.
I don't believe it. I think he's really like that. Do you feel like this show, from a cultural relevancy standpoint, has gone to another level?
I think so, just because people like yourself who, as we've discussed in the past, do not want to watch shows set in the forest. If even Bill Simmons is watching Game of Thrones, I think it's gone to another level.
And it was easy to catch up because it was only 20 episodes, a little less daunting than Breaking Bad, which is over 50, I think. How
far behind are you on that now?
No, I have an announcement to make. You're going to be really proud of me. I'm on season 2 of Breaking Bad and slowly, steadily cranking through it.
I'm giving you a slow clap right now. That's good stuff.
And not just that, but don't think Mr. and Mrs. Simmons didn't crank out House of Cards.
You're doing good. You're powering through. I like that.
You know what's big? Adding Apple TV to the bedroom was really eye-opening and liberating in a lot of different television ways. And having the Netflix just on command at 11:30, 12:30 at night has really opened a lot of doors and makes it so much easier to bang out shows and to be like, one more House of Cards. Hey, House of Cards. I'm gonna give it an A-.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it.
I went B+. I liked it. I didn't ever love it. I think there's parts of it that are really good and parts of it that seem kind of empty. And I don't know how I would have felt if I hadn't binged it. If I'd watched it a week at a time, maybe I would have liked it more. Maybe I would have liked it less. But I think there's definitely some good things in there.
Do you agree that they made a mistake dumping all the episodes out at once versus at least like staggering them to have maybe 3 a week or something, because nobody could recap the shows. They were just all out there.
Yeah, I mean, speaking selfishly as somebody who tries to write about a show every week, there was no way I could do that. But I definitely know there's a lot of people, that's the only way they want to watch shows now. They've been conditioned to do it by Netflix and by HBO Go and other things. And so the idea of having to wait a week, already seems archaic to them. And that's a model that's only a couple of years old at this point.
So you think it worked?
I think so, but on the other hand, I mean, people aren't really talking about it right now. It seemed like everyone who wanted to watch it either watched it immediately or they forgot about it, and so there's not a whole lot of places you can go for discussion right now. So we're going to see sort of how relevant it feels when we get to the summer, when we get to December, when we get to the second season of it. I don't know at this point. It seems it's a really new thing that they're trying, and this is one of the first shows to do it as a new show as opposed to when you can just catch up on all the Mad Men in 5 seasons.
I'm going to call it an unqualified success because when I heard the idea, I was like, that's going to be awful. Oh my God. What are the Netflix? Come on. And it was really good. You gave it a B+, I gave it an A-. It kept my interest. It made me realize, once again, how much I love Robin Wright, dating back to her Santa Barbara days. I've been with her forever. Jenny Gump, maybe the glory years, Princess Bride. It was great to see her in a different kind of role. The tough one for me, I'm still sorting out my feelings on Kevin Spacey. Just in general.
He's kind of, I mean, he's always been kind of a ham, and this is a performance that really encourages him to be hammy, especially when he starts turning to the audience and talking to us and telling us what the scene that we're about to watch is about.
It basically encouraged all the things I like about Kevin Spacey and all the things I don't like about him. It just were in all full bloom. And the word I would use is precious. He's always so precious in anything he does. And this was like, he's super duper precious. And, I was trying to think like who would have been better? Who would have been better in that role? And I came up with the answer.
Who's that?
If you put Tommy Lee Jones in that role, that shows an A+.
All right. I could see that. But, you would still have to have Corey Stoll as the alcoholic congressman, because to me, he kind of walked away with the entire season. He was fantastic.
He was unbelievable. I don't want to spoil anything, but I loved him, and I'd never seen that actor before. Does he have a legitimate chance to win Best Supporting?
I want to see how this show is going to do. I think Spacey's a lock to get a nomination because he's a movie star, and TV has movie star envy. I want to see how widespread the nominations are for the show beyond that. I think supporting actor in a drama is just about the toughest field there is, because you got Dinklage from Game of Thrones, you've got Aaron Paul, who's won it a couple of times. You know, no one from Mad Men has ever won it, but Slattery gets nominated all the time. I don't know if he's even going to get in. If he gets in, I think he's got a good shot because he's got a lot of good material to submit.
And then Kate Mara, I feel like she's in the mix.
That was a character who I think I might have liked more if I had seen it over 3 months instead of over 2 weeks, because it feels like she makes a really big transformation over the course of that season, and it feels like it happens in about 5 seconds because I was watching them all on top of each other.
Big Grantland office argument almost tore apart the office. Like, we almost had fistfights. The Mara power rankings, and there was a Rooney camp and there was a Kate camp, and it really got ugly. There's still a lot of hard feelings.
Before this show, it was Rooney in a walk. There was no discussion whatsoever, even though Kate's been in some good things and sings a good national anthem when they have her at the Giants games. But Kate in this show demonstrated that perhaps, her sister isn't the only one with some real chops here.
So you still lean toward Rooney?
I would still probably lean towards Rooney, but at least it's a discussion now, which I wouldn't have thought it ever would be.
Oh, believe me, it's been a discussion.
Okay.
There's been lots of discussion and lots of time wasted over this. I think it's Kate. The bottom line is Rooney creeped me out in the Dragon Tattoo movie, and I can't get over it.
Okay. Well, either way,
Joffrey.
Either way, as a Giants fan, I win, so I'm good.
It is great. It's unbelievable how that worked out. Justified is good. That's another one that's on my Netflix list. Everybody is raving about this last season. What was your grade for that?
This was probably their second best season ever. The second season they did with Margot Martindale was really good. This was close. I'd probably put it an A-. Really good. And they did an episode this year, the 11th one, called Decoy, which is right now is the runaway winner for my favorite episode of a TV show in 2013. But we still have a lot of year to go, and Mad Men just got started. So.
Oh, and we don't have the killing yet. Don't forget to work that in the mix. It's coming back.
Of course the killing's coming back. We can't kill it. It's just going to keep going and going.
Their slogan should be, The Killing. Look, it can't get any worse.
I like
Season 3.
AMC did this brand new branding campaign, and they're showing clips from other shows in there, and I think that you can see The Killing in some of those ads. And why would you want to associate anything with The Killing? If you need it for filler programming, fine, I get that. But don't remind people that you're the network that gave us The Killing.
Yeah, they should change the name. That would have been an interesting move, right? Just change the title and just people would have gradually. Wait a second, that's the girl from The Killing. Wait, that's the same character. What did they do? They tricked us.
They've tried that on a few occasions in the past. It never works out with those shows where they just try to change the name and trick people. I guess except for Valerie, and that's just because they killed off the Valerie Harper character.
I actually had a great idea that I wrote a Walking Dead recap for us this year, and I wish I had worked this in. I think they should have merged The Killing and Walking Dead.
I could see that. As long as Holder survives, that works.
What happens?
As long as Holder survives, that works. He's the best character on either one of those shows.
Yeah, I feel like Holder and Norman Reedur's character. What's that guy's? Not Daryl. Daryl. Yeah, they would have been buddies. And also Rick and the heavy sweater lady from The Killing would have had some of the worst scenes in television history. Just a lot of brooding and
maybe she could start hallucinating. It would be. I could totally see that.
And she'd still be wearing sweaters even in Atlanta during a zombie apocalypse for no reason, just these big, heavy, long sweaters. Mad Men last night. This will be the last
I got the
thing
sense from seeing you on Twitter that you didn't like it.
What was to like? It was 2 hours and nothing. It reminded me of one of those terrible David Chase Sopranos episodes where he's just like, I'm David Chase. I can do whatever I want. You're going to sit there and watch this for an hour because I'm David Chase. This is what I can do.
All right, well, I'll say this, and this is going to sound like one of those annoying TV critic things, but I watched it the first time. I wasn't 100% sure on it the first time. It felt a little bit like, okay, now we're coming back and we're checking in on everybody. Then I watched it again the second time to take notes for the review, and I really, really liked it at that point. So that's one that may wind up growing on people. I don't know, but I didn't like the Betty stuff, but I really liked Peggy at her new job. I thought was tremendous. If the episode had just been that, I would have loved it.
Wow, I'm stunned that you loved it. I was so bored.
Peggy kicks ass, takes names, and turns into Don Draper. What's not to like about that?
Listen, Peggy talking football was fantastic. Hey, what year do we think we're in now?
It's the end of 1967, start of 1968, because they have the ad running in Super Bowl II. Because she says it's going to be the Packers versus either the Raiders or the Chiefs.
I remember.
Yeah. But
I don't remember the actual ad because that might have happened during one of the 11 times I fell asleep.
Well, that's the other thing is I get to, at least for the season premiere, I get to watch without commercials. Starting next week, I'm going to be like everybody else, and I'll have to tune in and sit through those weird end-of-act breaks that don't, like, wait, what just happened? Now we're in an ad, huh?
Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll try to watch the show again and not fall asleep 11 times, and maybe some stuff we'll see together. I did see the ending. Things did, without spoiling it, things did pick up in the last 5 minutes. Last question. Hannibal is really good.
Yes.
Really good.
Yes. I was so prepared for it to be terrible because there's too many serial killer shows on right now, and most of the Hannibal, Silence of the Lambs sequels and prequels have been terrible. This is great.
It's a great show.
It's a really pleasant surprise, and it doesn't seem like NBC knows what it has in it because they stuck it on Thursday at 10, which has now become their death slot, and it did okay in its first episode, and I think they're probably at least going to air all of them, but this is a really good show that deserves better.
They're so stupid, and it's such a terrible network, and the fact that they had a pilot that was that good, and the only reason I watched it was because you and Greenwald told me I should watch it. First of all, Hugh Dancy, who knew? He was great.
Yeah, I think he and his wife, Claire Danes, are going to have a running competition to see who can play the better crazy character.
Better crazy, flinching, like weird facial expression character. Who would have thought they could have reinvented Hannibal and make him interesting in a way that I didn't feel like I was comparing him to Anthony Hopkins? I was stunned by that.
Well, because Mads Mikkelsen, the guy who plays him, is smart, and he doesn't try to do just big and broad like Hopkins or like Brian Cox. He goes really small and still and creepy in that way, and that's why you're not comparing him. It's very smart.
Where is he from?
Casino Royale. He's the villain in that.
Oh yeah, you're right. And then my last point. I'll try not to make this TV nerdy. I thought it was really well directed. It was just visually absorbing. You agree?
No, I agree. The guy who directed is David Slade, and he, again, without getting too TV nerdy, pretty much anything he directs I will watch just because I know it's going to look cool. And just the way they chose to visualize the idea that the Hugh Dancy character, we've been hearing for 25 years whenever Manhunter was that this is a guy who, he can put himself in the mind of a serial killer, and that usually just involves William Peterson or Ed Norton or somebody furrowing their brow and trying to make you think that they're tormented. And here you get to see him become the killer, and it's just beautiful and disturbing and awesome.
It's a great show. I was just stunned by how much I liked it. And even after you guys were saying that it should be watched, I still was like super dubious because NBC, everything they touch turns to poop.
Yeah, but, it's the show that the following really wishes that it was. It's so good.
Yeah, and it really puts a big giant spotlight on how bad the following is. And I feel bad for Kevin Bacon because obviously he took that show for the money. And, it's no secret he got cleaned up by Bernie Madoff, but it's such a mail-in by him. Like, it really, I don't even know what the athlete comparison would be, but oh my God, it's such a bad show, and he's so bad in it. And I finally broke up with it after about 6 weeks, but it's almost like a torture. It's like violence porn. Who said violence porn? Somebody wrote that it was violence porn. Maybe it was Greenwald, but it's just such a macabre. What's that word? Macabre,
yeah. And it's a show that sort of gets off on the violence in a way that Hannibal doesn't. Like, Hannibal is scary, but it doesn't seem to be enjoying It's not like, ooh, isn't this cool? It's, ooh, I'm going to give you a nightmare now because you should get a nightmare when you watch this.
Hannibal, great show. Mad Men, wasn't as big of a fan. Love Game of Thrones. I will watch Justified. I'm plowing through Breaking Bad. Alan Sepinwall, hitfix.com. Good luck with the Knicks. We might see you in round 1, the Celtics of Boston. We will be there, I think.
Celtics are unkillable. They still scare me even at this state.
Deep down, you're afraid of Paul Pierce still.
Yeah, Paul Pierce is so annoying. So annoying. So that'll be a series I dread if that happens.
All right, we're going to talk to you in a few weeks. Alan, thank
Bill.
you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.